Town Center Development Agency meeting to order. Deputy City Recorder Patton, please call roll.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Youth Councilor Turley. Council President Goodhouse.
Here.
Councilor Newton.
Here.
Councilor Luke.
Here.
Councilor Anderson.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance as we have been doing since COVID-19. So, Mr. Nollop, please put the flag up and everybody mute yourselves and participate on your own. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nollop. Let's move on to, do we have any non-agenda items, either from staff or from council?
Mr. Mayor, staff have no non-agenda items.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is public testimony. Public comments have been accepted in writing, and calling questions will be taken via telephone for items number 4 on the agenda, master fees and charges, and item number 7, budget adoption, and item number 8, the TCDA budget adoption. You may call in for those, and I'm going to state the phone number for anyone watching now that would like to make comments. You may call the following phone number, 503-966 4101. We would ask that you call in between 6:45 and 7 p.m. and you may be waiting on that line for a period of time until we get to your call and your topic. But hopefully, if you want to provide feedback verbally and testify in person virtually, you are able to do that tonight. So thank you, staff, for making that happen. Next item on the agenda is to receive a state of the district update from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. Chief Weiss.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for having me, Mayor Snyder, City Council. It's good to see your faces again. I haven't seen you in a while. So thanks for having me. We certainly appreciate the City of Tigard and our partnership, and I hope you guys are all doing well during this unusual time. Before I forget, congratulations on successfully passing the public safety levy. That's a huge deal. I'm a little envious, quite frankly, but great job. And there was a lot of hard work that went into that. So the organization would typically give you, tell what we've been doing the last year, things that have changed, a lot of data, a lot of statistics. But this year we're going more with what's real and what's happening right now, which certainly a focus has been COVID-19 for us. On a side note, we've certainly admired, appreciated, and agreed with the message posted by Mayor Snyder and Chief McAlpine related to denouncing racism and fostering a peaceful community dialogue. And I think that's so important for your community. We're certainly grateful for our partnership that we have with Tigard PD, and it's not just going on calls together. They step up and are dispatched on cardiac arrests and other incidents within the city to actually help us provide a better service to our community. So that will not change moving into the future. We appreciate and enjoy our partnership with all of our law enforcement partners. So like most of our city and county partners right now, we've really been focused on logistics, operations and changes in operations, and then all kinds of communication related to the pandemic. We utilize our public health partners as much as anyone. We have our supervisor physicians, we have our occupational health doctor, we also have county health, and that all guides the decisions that your fire department is making and has been making in the last 4 or 5 months now. We're staying in constant communication with our cities as well and the county. We have weekly meetings with the city managers, so we stay in touch with your city manager as well as other nearby city managers. We've had a COVID-19 task force in place since early March. So we started pretty early with our task force, assuming that this would ramp up more, and then realizing we have a real logistical supply need for PPE. So the best way to handle an incident that we've never handled before Mind you, in my first 9 months as the fire chief, we needed a task force that a very large group of sharp people that answered the questions that we had and provided the direction for the organization moving forward. So they've been around since the first part of March. We've equipped our personnel with new equipment. We continue to train and constantly communicate with our front line. I see that you use Teams. We use Zoom within Wildlife Fire and Rescue. And in last year's budget, we pushed through Zoom D10 TVs for every station, our offices, and our training center. And we didn't plan on rolling out those TVs when we did, but thank goodness we had them, because our communication is an all-time high. I've been with the organization for 26 years, and it was back in 1995 when we actually had two-way communication with chief officers and command staff at the station level. And with all the changes in technology, 2020, we finally have that two-way communication back. So we've spent a lot of time on Zoom. I think some people have Zoom fatigue, but I can have a meeting at 8 a.m. in the morning with the battalion chiefs, and by 11 a.m., every firefighter in the district knows exactly what the message is, and we can in turn answer questions that the line has along the way. So communication outstanding. Connectivity, it's not quite as personal, right? So we struggle. How are we going to get that connectivity back? But communication, all-time high. We're disinfecting our apparatus. We're disinfecting our fire stations. We're sort of known for cleaning in the morning and cleaning at night, and now we're cleaning in between. So the clean stations are even more clean. We have rescues and medics in our system, so sometimes those get a more thorough cleaning. Some of those even go to AMR, and they can professionally clean them in their shop. So we've been doing that pretty much since the onset of COVID-19. For our personnel, we've tested nearly 30 or a little over 30 personnel right now, and I'm happy to report we only had one employee COVID positive. So if you think about 600 or so employees, 450 line firefighters and paramedics, one positive case is a testament to them following the procedures and practices that were given to us by our supervising physicians. I can tell you that that individual is healthy, well, and back to work. And so far, that's all we have. I worry more about our personnel at home right now, quite frankly. I know that we're giving them everything they need for PPE and respiratory protection, but it's those risks out there when they're away from the station, away from that equipment. Are they following the recommendations? Are they keeping social distancing, washing their hands all the time? And if they are, we're going to be successful. But if they don't, we might see more cases in the future. Certainly, knock on wood, we hope not. So our current PPE supply is sufficient, and I suspect that might be a question. It's a question I get quite often. I want to say that community members across our district stepped up and gave us all kinds of personal protective equipment early on. And that's where the struggle was. There was unknowns, there was fears. I can tell you in our fire district, there was stress. And it's tough when it's an unknown and we don't know how to respond. And so we want the highest level of PPE. And that supply chain was strained, certainly. Everybody in first response and public health were vying for the same things. And so how do you get that PPE? So we had citizens bring in stuff and drop it off. We had local businesses in our district drop off PPE. And we piecemealed all of that together to be sustainable, I would say, for a short period of time. Once we learned that the supply chain was going to be even more challenging, we went to a reusable personal protective equipment. And we did it because we knew that was sustainable. We knew that we had a higher level of protection than we likely needed, but you could wash it off and use it again. And we did this pretty early on in March. Towards the end of March is when we implemented that. But I know that when people see our suits, if they see a white, we call them bunny suits, or if you see something that's tan and it looks like an alien or a hazardous materials team member, we're doing it for good reason. And we have not missed a 911 call since this started. And I want to be able to get from the first call to the second call to the third call. And the way we do that is we have to wear the right PPE. So we don't have any plans to change what we're wearing anytime soon. And as the summer months come upon us and the temperatures rise, I'm certainly concerned about heat fatigue and heat-related illness among our firefighters. But we do have a supply of disposable that's lighter weight, mesh in the back. They can use it, and if one person does patient care, then that's only one suit that's used, and then the other 3 members of the team they can stay away and not get their suits contaminated. So as far as PPE goes, we're okay for now. The supply chain is strained, but we're getting what we need as an organization. So we've tried to educate the public from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. We've used traditional media. We've used a lot of social media. I think our studio has done more videos in the last 4 months than they've done in the last 4 years, and it's with purpose. You may have seen a PSA that I did to hold the line, stay home and save lives. At that moment, it was super important for people to stay home, and I was very proud and honored to do that. I don't know if there's other PSAs that will come from our organization in the future, but we'll see how this continues to go into the summer and then fall months. As you're well aware, and as you try to open up, as others do, the cases continue to increase. And so I can't promise you when our offices will be open or when business will be back to normal for the fire district, because we are not on the same agenda or timeline as a lot of others, and we just can't afford to be. We have to keep our stations open. We have to keep responding to calls. That's the expectation, and that's the service that we deliver. So, not to be outdone by anyone else, one task force wasn't enough, so we started a second task force, and this task force came from me. I tell everybody that 100 ideas, one will be good, so throw out the other 99. So this was my one good one, I think, for the next 99 or so. I needed them to look into the future and predict as best they could what was going to happen with the pandemic and how the organization would be able to be adapting to it in modes of operation. And you're familiar with the phases and how the state will open up in phases. And what we determined, or what we thought, was that phases seem pretty final. Once you get to the phase, you get to move on to the next phase and so on and so forth. In the fire service and first response, we think of it in terms of modes, so we can quickly shift from one mode to the next mode and then back again as if nothing happened. And I don't want people to think that if we move into mode 2, let's say, we're never going to move back to mode 1, because we can certainly foresee having to back up modes of our operation, which is independent of what cities, counties, or businesses do. So a great group, smart people, looked into their crystal ball, produced a 44-page document that says, that tells the organization how we will reintegrate when the time is right, all based on CDC, all based on OHA, all based on our supervising physicians. This document has 4 phases. It's a national standard for how you would move, 4 modes, how you would move between modes and back again. And so we're still in our current mode. We don't plan on moving anytime soon. But when we do, we have a plan in place for when that will happen. One of the other things that it's going to do is it'll talk to us about who can come back into the offices. Early on in March, we sent all non-essential people home. So part of the plan talks about how do we bring people back into the office spaces, and what do we have to do to our facilities that makes them safe. Clearly, our number one priority is our people, and it always will be. So it's the safety of them, and how do we ensure that when they come back to office spaces, which can be frightening. This whole pandemic has been frightening, and so people have concerns about coming back to the office space. 2 task force wasn't enough for this fire district, so we created a 3rd task force. I'm not calling it a task force. This is our economic forecast committee. A lot of our people in our finance division, our CFO Tim Collier, they got together and they're having meetings to take a look at what's going to happen in the future of the organization fiscally and what indicators can they look at. And then once we have indicators, what tells us, what are trigger points where we have to do something different than we're doing today to be responsible and to be sustainable. So along with that comes, well, if you have triggers, then what levers can you pull to make adjustments? And so their job, they are tasked with reading the tea leaves, if you will, look into their crystal ball, see what's happening with development, see what's happening with tax returns. As you know, we're 99% funded by property tax. So what does growth look like? What does development look like? It's not today, right? We're looking into next year in the future. So there are some indicators along the way, but that'll drive our decisions for what we need to do to continue to be financially sound. I'm very confident in that group. They're going to do a fantastic job. Our facilities do remain closed to the public to limit exposure. I cannot predict when a community room at a fire station will be open again. I cannot predict when our training facility will be open to the public. I hope people understand. I know they love to visit us and drop off cookies or just a kind word, and we miss them too. We miss that public contact. But from the fire chief to my organization, I just can't afford any additional exposure. And it was probably my years on the hazmat team, which was time distance shielding, and anything you can do to reduce that risk and that exposure. So unfortunately, those won't open. I think that we don't have community events that we really go to anymore, again, to limit our exposure. But we're doing some other things so that we have a little bit of contact with our public. We do drive-by birthdays here and there. We've done some graduation parties for seniors who unfortunately can't have the traditional graduation. My daughter is a senior this year, and she graduated. And I think to a certain extent, and maybe somebody else could speak to this better than I can, but to a certain extent, I feel like they don't know any different. They've heard stories about proms and graduations and the parties and things of that nature, the walk and the speeches. And all she said was, so I don't have to listen to a 45-minute commencement speech. And I said, no, you don't. We're just going to drive through and everybody's going to clap and cheer and it'll be great. So they're making the best of it. Our heart goes out to them. We've driven by hospitals. We've driven by senior homes. We're just anything we can do to show that we're still there besides running 911 calls. And early when I started doing these city addresses, our call volume was pretty low. And it just was staying kind of stagnant. Since then and now, it's getting back up to where it was before. So we do have a lot of contact in the public when we're running calls, and hopefully they see us and they appreciate the fact that we might look just a little bit different. Let's see, our firefighters and paramedic recruits have now graduated from the academy. While this COVID pandemic was going on, there was actually some thought that more of our personnel would be exposed and then contract COVID-19. So we sped up our academy to get them ready to come out on the line if we needed them. And as it turned out, it was a shorter academy. It was more intense. There was more repetition, more training. And so they're probably as qualified, if not better, than any academy that's come before them. So they're now out on the line. There's other things that we continue to do. We continue to put new apparatus in service. We do a ton of training virtually, predominantly virtually. We do have some crews that'll travel and train at the training center or other training centers just to keep the hands on, get those reps in that we need. Most people don't realize how much training we actually do in a day, and this has really curtailed the training that we need. So we're finding ways to fit it in. And another positive silver lining, if you will, is crews are hungry for training. They want to get out there and train again. Sometimes it felt like the same thing you're doing over and over again. And now, no, we want to be out there. We want to be doing that. So we're trying to release more crews to be able to get out and train. So far, if July 4th is coming up, and so far we don't have any fireworks displays. I think everything has been canceled. I do have a little bit of concern that if there aren't big displays, people might make their own big display. And of course, each year this time, that's a concern for your fire department. We hope that people are responsible and they're safe about it. We'll be doing some public education on fireworks safety. And then since it's getting close to summertime, we'll also do some stuff on water safety this month. So I know that I get a weekly opportunity to engage with your city manager. And I know that Chief Kennedy will continue to engage with the city and offer any assistance that we can. It's an absolute pleasure being your fire chief and serving your community. And that is my list of bullet items. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Let's go to Councilor Newton. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, just really quickly. First of all, Chief, I want to thank you and your amazing crews for everything you do to keep us safe. I know it's got to be challenging now, the concerns about COVID, and I appreciate very much that you quickly adjusted and adapted to, to make the call, to respond to the calls. I just got a quick question out of interest. You talked about the call volume was lower and it's increased somewhat. Are the calls different, or are they the same, pretty much the same type of calls you were getting, but your response just has to be a little different because of the COVID challenge?
Yeah, first off, thank you. We appreciate the support. I thank you on behalf of all of our men and women that work for TVFNR. We do appreciate it. When we started out with the pandemic, we basically said every patient's COVID positive. Until you learn otherwise, or you can determine otherwise, every patient is COVID positive. And so with the calls that we had, they were the same types of calls. They weren't really different. The concern that we had and that we were watching very closely was as the calls slowed a little bit and there wasn't this reaction to, I could have COVID, I'm calling 911, and they started to slow, then it was fear that people that really needed to call 911 were no longer calling 911. Either they thought they were okay, or they didn't want to get exposed, or they just didn't want to go to the hospital. So as the calls started, the call volume started coming back, we were thinking now we're going to have very sick people that waited too long, and that really hasn't materialized at this point. We're still getting, the same quality and quantity of calls that I would report to you in each year. Nothing's jumping out as different, but as you know, with TVFNR, we will crunch the numbers, we will dive into the data, and if we can see trends we can address, we absolutely will.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Councillor Lube.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and that was an incredibly thorough update, and it was really interesting to hear about all of the different ways that you're adapting, and you're also looking forward, as we're trying to figure out and navigate the path forward. So I just really appreciate it, and thank you for keeping our community members safe and all of your staff and firefighters safe as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes, thank you for the thorough presentation. Just a quick thing you mentioned briefly with mentioning 4th of July. I've had some people ask what, I think people aren't used to being at home or what they can or can't do. Could you just give a quick, brief description of what, from the fire department eyes, what is and isn't allowed, and what people should or shouldn't be doing that day?
Yeah, so we'll certainly have some literature that's going to go out. But as a general rule of thumb, we always say if it's flying, don't be buying, and because those are typically the ones that get us in trouble. The things that launch and go up in the air and come down, when they hit shrubs, when they hit roofs, those are challenging fires, and they spread quickly. And if there's any length of heat and dryness leading up to the 4th of July, then certainly that's even a higher risk. But it's use the legal fireworks, be safe, adult supervision, have a bucket of water so that when you use some type of firework, you dispose of it in a bucket, soak it, get it wet, leave it away from your home. Those same types of advice that we give each year, and we'll have more literature that'll be going out to the community through various means.
Great, thank you.
Designated driver too. Got to do the other public health stuff.
Yeah, it's I wasn't going to go there, but it's true.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chief Weiss. I have no questions for you. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Youth Councillor Turley, have you joined us? I want to give you an opportunity if you did.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties earlier. Can you hear me okay?
No, we can. Do you have any comments or questions for the chief?
Not at the moment. Thank you so much for the presentation, though.
You're very welcome. And I actually have a comment, if you don't mind, Mayor. I was able to watch a little bit of the city council meeting last week, and I love this idea, this member that comes in and gives you a completely different perspective. And it's got me thinking, how would we apply something like that if we want to do the same thing? So certainly very sharp young lady with thoughtful questions, and I just want to throw that in. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is to consider a resolution thanking Youth Counselor Megan Turley for her service to the City of Tigard over the last year. So we have a resolution that recognizes that Youth Counselor Turley's term of service is ending on June 30th. She's contributed a full year of outstanding service to the city. She's earned the admiration of her fellow counselors, city councilors, and the staff for her dedication and professionalism. You were also the first youth city councilor, which I want to recognize as well. And I just personally want to thank you for what you've done in the first year of representation. I think the last couple months, it's been even more critical that we have your voice and frankly the voice of our whole Youth Advisory Council, and it's going to continue to be even more important. So I want to thank you for that. Each city councilor may want to make a comment, I don't know for sure, and then we are going to act on this resolution, and then there will also be a little surprise arriving at your house tomorrow. So Councilor Anderson, anything you want to share?
Megan, way to hang in there. Quite a few boring meetings, I'm sure, for you from your point of view, but you've really grown throughout the years, and we really appreciate you. And you'll always be the first counselor, so good job.
Councilor Newton?
Yes, I had the privilege of sitting next to Youth Counselor Turley over the past year, and I was really impressed with how prepared she always seemed to be. I would sit next to her as we were getting ready to start the meeting and say, was there an item on the agenda? Is there an item on the agenda that you found particularly interesting? And even in those moments, she would point out a land use issue or something that she was curious about or wondering about and hadn't really realized that the city would be taking action on. So I continue to be impressed by her preparedness for all the meetings. I'm going to miss sitting next to you, Megan, and I wish you all the best as you. I think you're going to U of O. Go Ducks! Wish you all the best, and thank you very much for being our first youth city councilor.
Councilor Lube?
Yeah, Youth Counselor Turley, I just want to thank you for your insightful perspectives that you always share during our council meetings. It was always really helpful to get your perspective and your opinions on things, and it was just really great to have you here. So thank you for your time and for your service to the city and to your fellow students.
Council President Goodhouse?
I echo what's been said. Thank you for your time, your service, for stepping up. And not only did you step up on the council, but you were really active in the community. And that's always great to see. And I hope that continues. I'm sure that you've chosen to do that. It's probably a passion of yours. And I'm excited to see where you go and keep us updated. We'd love to hear where you
Unknown participant is now exiting.
But thank you for your service, and thank you for stepping up and helping us out and being so insightful.
Who would like to make a motion?
Councilor Lube, I can make it. I move to approve resolution number 20-31.
Councilor Newton, I second.
It's been moved and seconded. The city recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 20-31, a resolution thanking Megan Turley for her service as Tigard's first youth city councilor.
City recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Councilor Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 20-31 is adopted unanimously. Thank you, and again, congratulations, Councilor Turley. And you still got to get through this meeting, so you don't get to leave now. We need you more than ever. Okay, let's move on to item number 4, an informational public hearing, consideration of a resolution to adopt master fees and charges schedule for fiscal year 2021. I am going to open the public hearing with my knuckles, and let's see. Anyone that wants to offer testimony will be allowed to do so. Comment has been received in advance in writing. I think we have some comments. I want to refer the counselors to those. We received them in the last couple of hours, so I want to, in fact, I think it might have been as late as 5:30, so I want to make sure that folks see the comments that came in. There are at least 2 written ones that came in on this agenda item. Has all the council been able to review those?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Nollop, do we have folks that want to testify in person, orally?
We do have one caller in the queue for master fees and charges.
Okay. Would you please connect them?
I sure will.
And Mike, do we have their name or?
Hello, welcome caller. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Councilors. My name is Ezra Hammer. I'm with the Home Builders Association of Metropolitan Portland. Our address is 15555 Bangui Road, Suite 301, Oswego 90305. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can, Mr. Hammer, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments, I hope follow written testimony received, seeing some relief on a park STC increase. Please forgive me if that letter was not received by you, but that's my understanding. And what I was merely hoping to highlight for the council tonight is what I believe is covered in this letter, which is our desire to have the City Council explore the possibility of providing greater certainty in the development process, specifically around system development charges, and more specifically with the idea of vesting system development charge rate land use applications are accepted by the city. As the City Council knows, once a land use council is a land use application has been submitted, it can sometimes take many months in order to process before a project is able to move forward. And what we're hoping is that the City Council will explore the possibility of providing fee certainty during that time period when an applicant is in the process of waiting for their application to be reviewed and either approved, amended, or denied. I want the council to know that our organization has had positive and and we're hopeful that as the city moves forward with the implementation of new and updated software specifically for the planning department, that they'll be in a position to take up this proposal and consider vesting SCC rates at that time. Again, we believe that once the city has that software in place, they'll be able to, with minimal to no cost. So thank you again for letting me testify tonight. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and I'll sign off.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. Okay, Mr. Nollop, do we have any other callers on item number 4 on the agenda?
We do not have any other callers at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to staff reports. Finance and Information Services Director LaFrance and Senior Management Analyst Kang.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director for the City of Tigard. As you mentioned, I'm here with Senior Management Analyst Stephen Kang, who is this budget analyst for the city. And what I'd like to do this evening, before we get into the individual hearings, is to have a brief overview of the process, and then we'll launch into the hearings themselves. Give me a moment here to bring up the slide deck for the evening. Can you see the title slide?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So as we're getting started, I'd like to first off thank the many hours put in by city staff, by our budget committee, and they went through 11 hours of public budget committee meetings, including an all-day Saturday meeting. And for those that don't know, the budget committee is made up of council and an equal number of citizens of the city of Tigard that dedicated their time to considering the budget that's before you this evening. Really this process started last fall with trying to do forecasting of our revenues, setting up budget guidelines. During the winter, our staff did a lot of work to thoughtfully plan for the next fiscal year and consider things such as council goals, the strategic plan, the performance audit, and use those inputs to put together what eventually became a proposed budget that went forward to the budget committee to consider. The budget that's before you this evening has already gone through budget committee. It's been approved by them. During the budget process, we did include the impact of COVID and how that might be impacting our resources and our work plans. And really overriding all of this is the continued theme that council and the budget committee has heard for a number of years. The city of Tigard is financially stable. We do a good job of living within our means. We are resource constrained, and that means that our revenues in many areas do not grow as fast as the expenditures that those revenues are supposed to support in order for us to provide services our community needs. And that means that we are service level challenged. So the budget before you does align with City Council goals for 2019 through 21. It does support our refreshed strategic plan where Tigard is an equitable community that is walkable, healthy, and accessible for everyone. It does plan for future facility needs. We need to replace aging city facilities, including facilities for police and our public works services that are needed. And it implements performance audit recommendations, including the local option levy, which our community thankfully passed. And that will add 8 new officers for patrol to reduce response times, add 1 school resource officer, provide advanced crisis de-escalation training for all officers, and fund support services needed to ensure that these new officers receive the same level of support that existing staff receives today. In addition, another important piece of the performance audit that this budget funds is integrating our technology. We're replacing our asset management, financial system, and permitting systems, as well as records and a number of other key systems in the city using the Total Tyler process and software. The audit pointed out that our standalone technology systems were not functioning well, were not properly integrated, and needed to be replaced. In terms of the impact of COVID, from a service level standpoint, in the next year, Tigard will continue to fund aided programs such as housing and utility bill assistance, and we'll continue to provide our services differently. As we go through the different reopening phases, we will continue to do things like include virtual outreach opportunities, telecommuting for staff, telecommuting for potentially for public meetings such as this, council meetings on Teams, internet commerce, and maintaining our emergency operations center as needed. Financially, we did do a dive into how COVID is impacting the economy and how that might impact the revenues that are needed to provide services within the city of Tigard. One area of good news is that Tigard is not as dependent on revenues that have been severely impacted by COVID, like income tax, sales tax or gross receipts tax, or event revenues. Organizations like the City of Portland, Metro, or cities that have been heavily dependent upon tourism have been forced to move quickly and to make cuts. This is not the case for the City of Tigard. And so we are still able to provide the basic services that our community needs at the level that they've come to expect. That said, it is still early in the pandemic and early in measuring how this is going to impact our economy. So far, Tigard finances are not severely affected by the pandemic, and we can continue to provide largely uninterrupted public services. We have the ability, because we've got some healthy reserves, we do have the ability to be patient and see where our economy heads in the future. We will watch this closely and we'll make adjustments to services when needed, and we will keep Council and the Budget Committee apprised as we do so. So a little bit by the numbers, our fiscal year 2020-2021 approved budget totals nearly $190 million. This is almost a $50 million or 36% increase over fiscal year 19-20, our current fiscal year that's coming to a conclusion here in a couple of weeks. And this increase is almost entirely due to a number of capital projects moving from a design phase to a construction phase when we start having to spend large sums to get the construction done. Of the 36% increase in our budget, 30.5% comes from capital projects. These projects are using funds that are designed for that purpose, that we've been setting aside for that purpose. There are no general fund resources that are going to these capital projects. The general fund is where a lot of our key services, such as police and library, are located, so we're not having to compromise any of those services to do these capital projects. The remaining 5.5% portion of the increase is in our operations. 2% of that is because we have a new levy-supported services for police. The remaining 3.5% pays for inflationary increases and a small number of new services and projects that are funded by dedicated reserves or revenues. The general fund budget itself is increasing by $2.2 million, or about 6%. The largest single portion of this is due to photo enforcement, which is supported entirely from new revenues and adds 4 FTEs, or about $600,000 to the budget. The remainder is made up of inflationary increases and a couple of small projects. So tonight, we'll be taking discussing and taking action on the following 4 items. We will be starting with the master fees and charges. The Tigard Municipal Code does state that the master fees and charges will be adopted each year as part of the budget process. We'll be talking about that shortly. We will then follow with discussion of both the city's election to receive state shared revenues as well as state revenue sharing. After handling those, we will then hit on our budget hearing and for the city, and conclude with a budget hearing for the TCDA. So that's the summary of the budget process to date and what we're looking at doing tonight. With that, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Kang, and he will talk about the master fees and charges item that's before you this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Steve Kang, Senior Management Analyst from Finance and Information Services. As Toby mentioned, every fiscal year, revised master fees and charges schedule is submitted to the City Council for approval, along with the citywide operating budget. The Exhibit A, master fees and charges, is a rather long document, so we've included the summary of changes report, which serves as a crosswalk of the proposed changes to the fees and charges. The document also contains the basis of the change and authority for proposing the change and where the changes can be found in the actual document. So instead of going into the details of the change, I'll just present. First one is so majority of the fees and charges increases are based on indices, And the indices are indices that we use are set in the city's code that establishes these fees and charges. The indices commonly used are CPI-U West and Seattle CCI. And just a reminder that the CPI-U Portland, which we have been using for several years, was discontinued as a part of the 2018 CPI revision. So starting last year, we decided to use the alternate index, which was CPI-U West. The next notable item is that many of the fees and charges increase will be delayed. This was a response to the COVID-19. So rates such as utility rates and other rates will be postponed. And the utility rate, by the way, is postponed until January 1st of 2021. And also clean water rates controlled by Clean Water Services will be extended through end of the 2020 calendar year. So CWS proposed that they won't be changing the rates until then. And they also stated that the rates and fees will be reevaluated in December 2020, and the increases may occur on based on the economic recovery of our region. Lastly, staff is recommending 2 administrative changes to the solid waste fees. These changes are not on the Exhibit A. We received the recommendation from the representatives from Pride Disposal and the Waste Management. It's more of administrative changes. So first one is an elimination of the duplicated line item, specifically lidded drop box rent, which is located in the 2 places. The other is keeping the non-sufficient fund fee and account reinstatement fee to be unchanged, as those fees are easier to manage, but without tying it to the index increase. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Toby LaFrance for the SDC topic.
So thanks, Steve. And to clarify on those administrative changes, what we are asking is when we do get to approval of the master fees and charges, that it be done with the change that one of the 2 fees be eliminated on the lidded, one of the 2 lidded container fees be eliminated, and so not that we're going to eliminate both of them. In addition to the administrative changes that we've requested, Council has received a memo from Community Development Director Kenny Asher regarding concerns a developer of a project in the Triangle. The developer has stated the impacts that COVID has placed on his development, the banking industry, and their ability to access financing for their project. They are asking that the increases in system development charges be delayed until January 1, 2021. As presented in your materials this evening, they're currently set to increase on July 1st. The memo goes on to outline the pros and cons of a delay, including any loss of revenue plus the bonus, the pros to development. If council wishes to take up this discussion, both Mr. Asher and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, concludes the staff presentation on the master fees and charges.
Okay, thank you, Mr. LaFrance. Mr. Nollup, do we have any additional callers?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any callers at this time.
All right, Mr. LaFrance, do you have any response to the testimony that we did hear a bit ago from Mr. Hammer? I guess it sounds like that maybe was somewhat of an alternative proposal to solving or addressing the SDC's question. So I don't know if that's related or whether you and Mr. Asher plan to cover that, or whether you want to respond to any other testimony that Mr. Hammer provided?
Both based on my notes from Mr. Hammer's testimony, he is looking. This is a slightly different issue. He is looking for SDCs to vest at the land use stage, and whereas currently SDCs are paid based upon the rate in place at the time that they pick up their building permits. And as Mr. Hammer discussed, the City of Tigard, and as I mentioned in the introduction, the City of Tigard is pursuing a new software system that will be our new enterprise system. It does include a new permitting system, and so what I heard him suggest is that as we're doing that we explore the ability of that system to allow us to vest at the land use stage and not at the current point in time. And that's something that we certainly can do. And as we're going through implementation of the Total Tyler system, report back to council on this and other potential changes to city processes that the system may allow us to do.
So are you saying if the council wanted to have a discussion about that idea right now, we have no administrative way of, or no method of administering it because of limitations in our systems? Is that what I'm understanding from that?
My understanding of what if we were to do it, my understanding of the system that's in place right now is that this would have to be a manual process, which would add to administrative costs of administering the SDC program.
Okay.
And I would defer to Mr. Asher on exactly how burdensome that would be.
Okay, and I'm not intending us to get. I just wanted to clarify what you were saying, and we do have public testimony. Are there any questions of staff before I close the public hearing, and then we'll get on to council discussion and consideration?
Council President Goodhouse, I don't know if right now would be the good time. I mean, I think this is a conversation for another time for community development. Kenny Asher to talk about the importance of vesting the SDCs. This might just be an issue we weigh in on this aspect, but I think it would be good to have a conversation another time, unless Kenny's on the line and wants to talk about the value of vesting SDCs.
Mayor, Councilor Anderson here.
Yes.
The Housing Task Force Group has been making pretty good progress on vesting the SDC rates, and so I would imagine something is going to come out of that. But it really did deal with the new software package, so you might just want to wait for that recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Asher, are you ready to speak on this SDC request and discussion now that's on the table?
Oh, good evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Only in the briefest of terms to really just kind of corroborate what others have said. It would be a lot of work to try to do something like this now if the council wanted to move in that policy direction, and I don't feel like we've yet had that full discussion yet, although it's been started because this is not a new item. But the other thing to keep in mind is that even if we could find a way to pull it off, which I don't recommend right now, the fact of moving to another software system means that whatever we build, we would be scrapping in a matter of 18 months to 24 months. So it really doesn't make sense now. I've spoken with Mr. Hammer. It's in my work plan. It's on the Tigard Development Advisory Committee's ongoing agenda. We can bring it back when it's more timely.
Mr. Asher, I'm sorry. I was trying to direct the conversation towards I thought there was more information you were going to share, and maybe I misunderstood from Mr. LaFrance, but more information you were going to share about the request now about potentially changing or adjusting the master fees and charges adoption for SDCs. Am I misunderstanding that?
Oh, I apologize. I can speak to that if you're ready to go there.
Yes, please.
Thanks for the clarification. So this is late-breaking information for the redevelopment program manager, Sean Farrelly, and myself. We heard fairly late last week that the project that's now called the Overland, which is the 250 plus units mixed use project at the corner of 72nd and Dartmouth in the Triangle, was really struggling with its financing. It's not terribly surprising. And it's due to things that won't surprise you, especially Councillor Anderson. First of all, it's harder to find a lender. Some time was lost. The interest rates have increased up to 50 basis points. I think the project's facing another $500,000 in costs on interest alone. Loan to value underwriting standards have changed to where now there's just going to be a lower ratio where the lender is going to make a smaller loan. Insurance costs have gone up. A lot of things have changed in the picture for that project. And I'll remind the council that the development agency is an investor in that project to get all that housing and commercial happening at the really important site in the Triangle. So for all those reasons, we were asked by SKB Development and their partners, would we consider delaying the implementation of this SDC fee increase for our parks SDC. We don't have as much control, obviously, or any control over what the TDT is doing or Clean Water Services. But it was pointed out to us that other agencies like Clean Water Services, like the City of Portland, have seen fit during this public health emergency. It's sort of along the same line of thinking that we've applied to utility rate delays and economic development stimulus programs and stabilization programs, that a fairly substantial SDC increase right now in our parks program seemed inconsistent. Honestly, I couldn't find a strong argument against that, except that we were not given a lot of time to prepare a recommendation for you, and we were getting really close to adopting this master fees and charges schedule. So what we agreed to do was to bring this to your attention, absent a recommendation, but just to sort of lay the facts in front of you and see whether you also had an interest in making that that delay. And I think that our finance director, Mr. LaFrance, can also add in a broader perspective about the fiscal impacts of doing something like that if you are interested.
Before we go there, I guess I want to make sure, I think I have, and I hope the city attorney is present. I may have a conflict because I have a couple projects that are in the land use process at this time. And so City Attorney Rahala, can you advise on whether I need to recuse myself entirely from the discussion or whether I have a potential conflict, or do I just need to declare the conflict and then continue? Can you advise?
Certainly. So if your action tonight would create a pecuniary benefit or avoidance of a detriment, that is a conflict. If you have an actual conflict, you need to recuse yourself. If it's potential, you can declare it and participate in the decision.
And the difference between actual and, I mean, I just stated the situation. So is this actual or potential?
So if you are for certain going to be impacted by the decision you're making tonight, that is actual and you should not participate.
Okay, so that's an actual conflict. Does that mean that I should hand over facilitation of the meeting to Council President Goodhouse for this part of it?
You can facilitate the meeting, but you cannot participate in the discussion.
Okay, and I also can't vote.
Correct.
Okay. All right. With that, Mr. LaFrance, did you want to add more to what Mr. Asher had to say?
Yeah, in terms, so in the memo, we've been able to provide you with a range of financial impacts that a 6-month delay may cause for the city in terms of revenue that we would not collect. We as Mr. Asher talked about, we tried to be consistent when we, for instance, when we talked about delaying utility rate increases. The city provided council with similar information on how it would impact our utilities. So we wanted to be consistent in terms of providing financial impact in terms of revenue lost. With SDCs, there's more uncertainty than there is with utilities. So looked at the last 3 years of activity and applied for instance, for parks, the recommendation based upon the indices that are in code results in a 10% increase in the parks SDC. Also, based upon the indices that are in code, you can see that the transportation SDC actually has a small decrease, slightly less than 1%. And so we outlined the impact that these various delays could have. And those delays are given both the average of the last 3 years in terms of revenue, if we applied it to the high year and if we applied it to low year, so you can kind of get a range in a sense. Those don't, because of the size of the project that was the impetus for this discussion, I'd say that those impacts don't include the impact of our overland project. That in and of itself, due to its size, would be saving somewhere in the range of $140,000 in terms of parks SDCs alone. So take whatever's in the table at $140,000, and that would give you a general sense of the range of revenue lost to our parks SDCs. Additionally, I would say Tigard has a history of, once we've established our SDCs, of making the annual update process fairly apolitical. It's set in code when what we're going to use for an index. We've done it annually on July 1st, going all the way. I had to go back to 2014 before I found anything that deviated from that. And so that provides predictability to the development community. So, a potential drawback is if we start changing on a regular basis the implementation date, less predictability and increases for the development community, which might make it harder for them to plan in the future. That said, whether or not that is a greater impact than the impact that COVID has had and to our community recently, that's why we're bringing this forward to council this evening for your consideration.
And just so I'm clear, and I think the whole council needs to be clear on this, you are asking the council potentially if there's going to be a big adjustment or whatever the discussion ends up coming, are you wanting the council to potentially adopt the master fees and charges tonight without the SDCs, or because of this potential change, if the council chooses to move forward with something different than what's proposed, are you wanting the entire master fees and charges brought back next week, for example?
No, we're looking for passage of the master fees and charges. And with this particular matter, if council could approve master fees and charges as presented, with the administrative changes that we brought forward, or council could approve the master fees and charges as presented and change the effective date for, in this case would be the transportation SDC, parks SDC, and water SDCs. Those are the 3 SDC system development charges that are under the purview of the city of Tigard. And so change those from July 1 to potentially January 1, 2021.
Okay, since I am recused, I'm not going to make any comments. Councillor Anderson.
Oh, can I ask a question, or are we
Sure.
moving to comments?
No, well, we were going to do both, but go ahead. Councillor Lube, you're on for questions and comments.
Oh, okay. So my question for Mr. LaFrance is, during the budget committee process, we decided to fund some positions out of the Parks Department through the reserve fund. And I'm wondering the potential delay of these parks SDCs, is it going to have any impact on the fund, or would it have any impact on your recommendation of how we funded those positions for the next fiscal?
Thank you for that question. It's always good with fund budgeting to talk about differences between infrastructure and the maintenance of that infrastructure. So the simple answer is no, it doesn't impact it. The operations of the maintenance of Tigard's parks is paid through general fund and the park and recreation fee. This can have a direct impact in terms of the amount of resources Tigard has in the future for infrastructure improvements to our parks system. So the system development charges provide primarily sources of revenue that we use to expand the capacity of the park system. In short, the system development charge is something that a developer pays because by putting in a house or a business or an apartment complex, we're putting more stress on the city's infrastructure, whether that be our water infrastructure, parks, or streets. And so they are paying into the system to compensate the city for future infrastructure projects we're going to need to build to accommodate the additional people that housing complex brings in or that business will bring in. That's the purpose of our system development charge. The one place where there's a little bit of overlap, there's two component system development charges. There's the improvement component, which is purely for that capacity increase. And then there's a reimbursement portion where sometimes there's parts of the system that have already been overbuilt and to accommodate future growth. And so that's essentially reimbursing the city for that piece. And we can use that for some major maintenance of existing areas. So within parks, for instance, we use that reimbursement portion to help us do things like replace aging playground structures. So that is a maintenance component, but it's not maintenance in terms of the operations of our maintenance to the park system. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Loop.
Yes,
Sorry.
that answers my question. And so
Councillor Lube, sorry, before we go further, I actually need to close the public hearing and I failed to do that. Your comment reminded me of that. So I am going to close the public hearing. Councillor Lube, back to you.
Okay, so my comment on what we're looking at on the master's fees and charges is I feel just for consistency purposes, we've done a lot for our businesses and for our residents. And I feel it's only fair to also extend this with our SDCs to delay until January 1st. That being said, I wouldn't be a fan of continuing to change it. I think this is a one-off sort of catastrophic event for our community, and I would prefer that we continue on the same change percentage or the same change schedule every the beginning of every fiscal year. But I think this would be a one-time exception to just go ahead and delay those SDCs until January as well.
Councillor Anderson.
I support delaying the SDC's increase as well. Financing has been crazy. I mean, literally changing by the hour. People get approved and then get bumped. So whether in residential or these larger projects, they're just killing these larger projects. So any new wrinkle that we throw at them as $140,000 would potentially kill a deal that would give us tax dollars for years and years to come, and to no fault of their own. So that's my comment. I would support this.
Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So are we limiting our comments and questions right now to the SDC or to all of it?
I was going to make the same comment, but I'm not supposed to be commenting. So,
okay.
but I had the same thought.
Okay, so I support consistency. I'll say that. I think we need to be consistent. I want to thank Mr. LaFrance and Mr. King for their thorough presentations. I am concerned moving forward that we are pretty early in this pandemic. We're not really sure about what the economic impact's going to be. We're going to have to look at council goals again, future COVID impacts, and we've got some issues in our community that we're going to be looking at around racial equity. So I think this is going to be a challenging year for our community. I think we're going to need to be more precise and more conscientious as we move forward with our budget. I was going to recommend later that we have a really thorough review with our budget committee in October to see where we are. I guess I have a question. I was going to recommend that we not commit to any increases because we may decide we don't want to increase in January. But I'm intrigued with, I would like to hear what Mr. Asher would say about consistency and certainty for our community. I mean, I guess we could adopt the fees with a January 1st effective date and then back off if we decided to. So I guess if you wouldn't mind taking a minute so we can hear from Mr. Asher and Mr. LaFrance on that. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond.
Go for it. Absolutely.
Sure. So I think that this issue of consistency is one of those, it's a casualty now of this era that we're living through with this illness. And yes, it used to be gospel, and it still is, I suppose, that's what developers want, but it's not, it's gone. And this question before the council is not going to change the larger issue as to whether a development company can plan for its next project. And so if you compare the issue of predictability, which is what they always want, as compared to some economic relief to help offset some of these costs that Councilor Anderson just talked about, every single company that I work with and that Sean and Lloyd works with would choose the latter. They would gladly forego knowing what the council is going to do in the next 6 months or 12 months with SDCs than they would for some relief, just like the rest of our businesses. I mean, these are businesses. They're Tigard businesses also, different kinds of businesses. But so it's no longer really an issue because we can't provide the larger consistency that they want, even if you have a very accurate and precise fee increase schedule. So in the community development department, we would land on the side of provide the relief, figure out if you want to schedule and then revisit the increase or not. But let's see if we can get this project built, because in the long term, it's going to provide housing, it's going to provide jobs, it's going to provide taxes, it's going to provide stimulus for other projects in the triangle, and cross that next bridge when we get there. Now, again, the finance director, who's managing the city's overall finances, has a different view on consistency and a different set of needs, and he might have a slightly different answer, but that's mine.
Mr. LaFrance?
Thank you. Yeah, and Mr. Asher is completely correct in terms of the value that this would bring to our development community and what our development community adds to the city of Tigard. One of, as I mentioned, with system development charges, the purpose there is because development does add to our community, we need to be able to provide the infrastructure and the services that come with that infrastructure. So, you know, what as we look at doing things, you're going to be considering a budget this evening. This budget has a capital improvement program. It's an important part of the city's services. I mentioned that the vast majority of the increase in this year's budget is because we're actually constructing a number of key projects. And one of the things that SDCs allow us to do is afford to put in those projects. We also, there's some small projects that are also in there that a lot of them are grant funded and we need to come up with match for those grants. A lot of times our system development charges are where where that match comes from. So, on the one hand, yes, our developers do need some relief right now. We have provided relief in other areas, and so it would, there would be some consistency to doing a delay to January 1. I would want to echo what Councilor Lube would say, is that we do return to July in the future if we are going to do a delay in system development charges. My concern in terms of helping council and the budget committee manage our finances is if we are both using system development charges to build infrastructure, yet on the other end, we are handicapping our system development charge funds by not doing our increases. We're burning the candle at both ends. And there's only so long that would be fiscally sustainable for the city.
Thank you. Councilor, any follow-up?
No, thank you. I appreciate that perspective. And I appreciate what you're saying. I understand about funding for our capital projects. I am concerned about moving forward, but I guess if we can have a robust discussion in October and revisit where we are, I could support the January 1st date, but I do think we should be consistent with the SDCs too, so I support that. But I do think we need to have an involved budget committee discussion as we're moving forward to make sure that we're looking at all these issues that we've got in front of us. And I appreciate your comments during your presentation, Mr. LaFrance. Thanks.
Council President Goodhouse.
I agree with it as well as delaying them to January and then having a conversation again to look at them. We did briefly talk about the vesting of the SDCs. The only thought would be is if we have a discussion later on in council that this might be something that would help in this situation and avoid this problem in the future. I know that Kenny Asher mentioned with the waiting for the software program, there might be something in the interim where the developers could, the burn could be on them. The proof to show that maybe it's another council discussion, maybe another time. But I'm in favor of delaying them to being consistent with all the other delays we've done as far as increases and everything to January. So I do have a question though for procedural. With the mayor, if we do a separate amendment and vote on that as far as this issue, can the mayor then comment on the rest of the items and vote on the overall part? That way it gives him the opportunity to discuss any anything else with the fees or changes.
Yes, I'll look to Director LaFrance also from the budget perspective, but from the conflict of interest perspective, yes, so long as the mayor doesn't have a conflict on the rest of the items, we can separate it out and do it in 2 votes.
So right now he can discuss the other topics, just not discuss anything to do with the SDCs, and then one of us can make a motion to amend the resolution, vote on that, and then he can vote on the overall one.
Correct. So the amendment would be to separate out the SDCs, vote on that separately, and then vote on the master fees and charges minus the SDCs.
Yeah, why don't you act on the SDCs now?
Okay. So I make a motion to remove the SDCs from the resolution 20-32, and part of that resolution is to delay the implementation of the transportation, the park, and the water SDCs to January 1st, 2021.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read well, I guess it's not a number and title of the resolution, but can you read back what has been moved?
So the motion was to amend the master fees and charges schedule to remove the SDC fee increases.
To remove to remove the transportation, park, and water SDCs from the master fee and charges schedule.
Okay.
And to delay the increases until January 1st, 2021.
So, Council, if I could make a suggestion, because we don't want to remove them from the master fees and charges entirely, they're a part of that. So I would suggest consideration of them separately. So the motion would be to vote on this portion of the master fees and charges schedule, and then the remaining portion of the master fees and charges.
So to remove the consideration of, to start that part with, okay.
Yep. Because they're a part of the master fees.
Did Council President Goodhouse get a second for his motion? And are you going to be moving to withdraw the motion and then make a new one?
Okay, I withdraw my motion, and then I know Tom, you second it.
I'll withdraw the second.
So I move for a consideration to, what was that again? So to remove?
To separately consider the SDCs.
Okay, I move to separately consider the transportation, park, and water SDCs and to delay the implementation of the increase to January 1st, 2021.
And I second that.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Is everybody clear on what the motion is? City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
Councilor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Don't you have to ask the mayor if he wants to abstain or remove himself?
I was going to ask the same thing, but I know different cities do it differently. So I abstain. I don't. City Recorder, is that acceptable?
It's acceptable to me if it's acceptable to the city attorney.
I guess I just need to know, city attorney, am I supposed to be voting as an abstention or not called because I said I was recusing myself? I just don't know what the right process is here.
They are entirely the same. So whichever process the city recorder wants.
Okay. I think we did both, so we'll move on. We're doubly covered here. Okay. So we are now going to go on to consider the rest of the master fees and charges. Other comments, deliberations, or questions, Council President Goodhouse?
None other for me, no.
Youth Councilor Turley?
None for me.
Councilor Lube?
No questions or comments.
Councilor Newton?
None for me. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson?
No questions or comments. I move to approve resolution number 20-32 as presented.
Councilor Newton, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
City
if I
Recorder?
may.
Oh, go ahead, Mr.
This is
LaFrance.
Toby LaFrance. Could we have, we do have the 2 administrative changes that staff has requested. Councilor Anderson had moved to do it as presented. Could we possibly, council consider amending that motion?
Councilor Anderson, you want to amend your original motion?
Do you want me to include the two that were mentioned tonight?
Yes, so it would be removing one of the duplicated fees and returning two fees within solid waste, the NSF and the and Mr. Kang, it was the reinstatement fee, I believe, that we mistakenly indexed, and those should remain the same.
Okay, I would amend that as presented by you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll second as amended.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded as amended. City Recorder, read the number and title of the resolution with the amendments.
Resolution number 20-32, a resolution amending the citywide master fees and charges schedule, which was adopted under resolution number 19-25, as amended.
And a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councilor Newton,
Yes.
Councilor Lube,
Yes.
and Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-32 is adopted unanimously. Thank you all. We will move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is consideration of a resolution certifying that the City of Tigard provides services qualifying for state shared revenues. Mr. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the next step in the budget adoption is that of the state shared revenues. The state of Oregon requires that the city certify its eligibility to receive these revenues by stating that it provides four or more services listed in ORS 221.760. The city provides 6 of the 7 required services and is therefore eligible for receiving state shared revenues. Services that the city provides includes police services, street construction, maintenance and lighting, sanitary sewer and stormwater management, planning, zoning and subdivision control, and a water utility. Approval of the attached resolution will meet the state of Oregon requirements for certification and receiving these revenues. These are state revenues that come from cigarette tax, liquor marijuana tax, and the state gas tax. The largest single portion of that is the state gas tax, which is important for the maintenance and operations of the city's roads. And staff recommends adoption of the resolution before you this evening.
Questions or a motion?
Councilor Lube, I move to approve resolution number 20-33.
Council President Goodhouse, I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 20-33, a resolution certifying that the City of Tigard provides services qualifying for state shared revenues.
City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councilor Newton,
Yes.
Councilor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-33 is adopted unanimously. We'll move on to item number 6, consideration of a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenue sharing. Mr. LaFrance.
So yes, so this is a share of this, an additional share of the state's liquor tax. It does require that the city have levied property taxes in the prior year, which we have, and that we hold a hearing, which we did. That hearing was held as part of the budget committee meeting on May 21st, and we estimate that the additional liquor tax from the state revenue sharing will aid the general fund by over $600,000. And staff recommends approval of the resolution.
Questions or a motion?
Council President Goodhouse, I move to approve resolution 20-34.
Councilor Lube, I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 20-34, a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state revenue sharing.
City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councilor Newton,
Yes.
Councilor Lube,
Yes.
and Councilor Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 20-34 is adopted unanimously. Move on to item number 7, informational public hearing, adoption of the budget, making appropriations, declaring the ad valorem tax levy, and classifying the levy as provided. I'm going to open the public hearing with my knuckles. And let's see, anyone that wants to offer testimony will be allowed to do so. We will be asking in a bit, Mr. Nollup will be asking you to patch through callers. Are there any callers?
There are not any callers, not at this time.
Okay. I know we also received some written testimony on this item as well. Let's see, we will go to Finance and Information Services Director LaFrance, staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. So we're now at the budget hearing for the city's budget. And a little bit of background here this evening. So the Budget Committee unanimously approved the budget. So in terms of budget process, our city manager, who's our budget official, will take and propose and recommend a budget to the Budget Committee. Budget Committee reviewed, asked staff questions, and took some in-depth look at certain parts of the city's budget. The deliberations did include an 8-2 vote approving the parks budget as proposed and funding the increase in the parks budget through the use of the park fund reserves. That park fund is funded largely through the Parks and Recreation fee, as well as general fund contributions each year. And there was a unanimous vote approving both the police levy and a $5,000 increase for Wi-Fi hotspots through the library. The budget that the Budget Committee approved unanimously has total appropriations approaching $190 million and nearly 333 FTE for the city. Staff is recommending 3 technical adjustments to the approved budget, and I'd like to take a moment to go through those. The first 2 are fairly straightforward. First is there's a COLA for our SEIU union. That's part of their contract. And that is based upon, in our contract, the CPI urban wage earners and clerical workers West. Our non-represented staff typically follow the SEIU to promote pay equity and prevent compression of pay scales. This will increase the budget by $660,429 across 12 operating funds. The police contract is currently under negotiation and is not included in that figure. Additionally, the Budget Subcommittee on Social Services and Community Event Grants met on Tuesday, June 9th. And this was one of the things that came out of the Budget Committee deliberations, asking them to reconvene and look at community events in terms of their whether or not COVID had impacted those events. The subcommittee recommended that the 3 events that stated they did not need their grants due to COVID be carried forward into the next year, fiscal year 20. That the dollars associated to those grants be carried forward into the next year, fiscal year 22. This would be an expenditure decrease to fiscal year 21 of $11,700 in the general fund and $9,500 to the transient lodging tax fund, for a total decrease of $21,200. So those are 2 fairly straightforward technical adjustments. The third one gets us into territory that we haven't gone through yet through a budget hearing process while I've been at the City of Tigard. This is the creation of a new police levy fund. And what staff is recommending is moving the levy expenses and revenues from the general fund to a new special revenue fund. The budget committee, the approved budget, puts both the revenues and expenditures in the general fund. What we're asking council to do through the adoption process is move it to that special revenue fund. After of conversations, it's apparent that accounting for the levy in a separate fund will add to the city's ability to clearly communicate regarding levy finances back to our community. Will work better within the limitations of our current financial software. It will be less administratively burdensome for finance staff, both in central finance and the finance staff within the police department. And per governmental accounting standards, it is recommended that these levy funds be accounted for in a special revenue fund due to the specific nature of the revenue source. The creation of the new levy fund, this is a zero net change to the budget. The revenues and expenditures associated with the levy in the budget committee approved budget will be removed from the general fund and will be placed in the new police levy fund, dollar for dollar. The budget resolution will need to have a new section that approves an interfund loan from the general fund to the police levy fund. This will be for cash flow purposes until property taxes are received in November and will be repaid during the fiscal year with no interest.
Mr. LaFrance,
yes.
LaFrance, can I ask a question while we're on that point?
Absolutely.
The mechanics of that, I mean, I understand the concept of it. I guess the mechanics of it are interesting. So we're supposed to hire, I mean, walk me through what this looks like if I'm a manager in the police department or I work in the finance department. So let's say that 8 new officers are hired and they're being paid for out of this new police levy fund, and all of a sudden we get to a point where an officer that was being paid for out of the general fund is either departs or resigns. Does that mean that the levy fund would, or someone in the levy fund resigned? Like, would there be intermoving of staff, and what happens when someone takes a different role? I mean, let's say they were being paid out of the levy fund, but now they're going to go become a commercial crimes detective. I mean, this kind of movement of staff happens all the time. I guess I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of what it means to say that the expenses are going to be, accounted for there. This seems like it's going to be a lot of work. Am I missing something?
It will be a lot of work, and and you're not missing something. Actually, staff has started meetings on how exactly we're going to handle exactly the things that you were talking about there. You have an officer that within our patrol, we'll have some officers that are general fund and some that are levy funded. Within our school resource officers, we'll have some that are general fund and one that will be levy funded. And you have officers that move assignments. And so, yes, we are going to have to actively manage which of those officers are being paid for by the levy and which of those are being paid for by the general fund. And we would need to do that in order to be able to report to the community how we're spending the levy. We would need to be doing that whether they were in the general fund or whether they're in a special revenue fund. So the need to do that kind of administrative tracking does not change based upon the fund that we're in. The ability to account for that tracking is made easier by putting it into a special revenue fund. It does provide clarity, and in addition, because the last point I made about per governmental accounting standards, it is because we have a levy and it has a very specific nature to the revenue source. It is recommended that it be put into a special revenue fund. A special revenue fund is similar to, say, our gas tax or our building fund where we're receiving revenues. They have a very specific purpose. We can only use them on certain things. We want to make sure that when we receive levy funds from this community for police services, that we are only spending that money on the things that the community said we can spend it on. So this will allow us to track it. And yes, you're right. It's going to be a lot of work.
Thank you. Sorry for that, but I felt it was a timely question.
Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Newton?
I had a question kind of along the same lines. I mean, I'm familiar with folks in our engineering department having to track which projects they're working on for time. So, you know, to charge to different capital projects. So I'm assuming, you know, we can work something out. The question I have, Mr. LaFrance, is, you know, you said that the accounting essentially has to be the same, whether we're accounting in the levy fund or in the general fund. I'm assuming then the administrative costs would not be different. I mean, we're not going to have to be charging more administrative costs to the police levy fund if we go with this model. Is that correct?
I would say that this is similar to what community development works with. Community development has a planning and an economic development portion that is general fund funded. They also have a building function that runs in the building division, and they need to closely monitor how they do what's paying for what. The police department's going to have to now operate similar to our community development department. It does require some additional administrative oversight. However, we've got examples of that, just like with engineering, as you talked about, and in our community development department. So it's not something we're unfamiliar with. It'll just be something new for the police department.
Right. I'm just concerned about, you know, I want to make sure that, and I'm sure it's not dramatically different, but I just want to make sure that we're, you know, we've got as much of the levy fund going to the services as we can. So it's probably not significant, but I was just wondering. Thanks.
Any other questions, or should I continue with the presentation?
Please continue, Mr. LaFrance. Sorry we derailed you.
Not a problem at all. Great questions, and I was glad to be able to clarify those items. So where this becomes a little different is for us is under Oregon Budget Law, ORS 294.456.1.c. Council needs to go through an extra step if we want to change the budget that was approved by the Budget Committee by more than 10% in any fund. Since this is a new fund with a current budget of $0, creating a police levy fund within our budget constitutes a change in excess of 10%. If Council agrees to create the new fund, Council will need to instruct staff to publish a new LB1. An LB1 is the form mandated by the state budget process for noticing the budget. So we had an LB1 that we published prior to this meeting. We would be asking Council to instruct staff to publish a new LB1 with any changes that Council has made, including the new fund, which is the trigger for this continuance. So we would be looking for Council to talk about any changes to the budget, both this and any technical adjustments, plus any adjustments that you may want to make that we haven't covered yet. Get those taken care of this evening, and then be able to publish a new LB1 that outlines those changes. This would both comply with budget law by noticing the changes that impact the budgeted funds over 10%, and by including all changes, we could provide clarity on changes Council wishes to make to the budget as approved. Staff will publish the new LB1 on the city's website. That includes all budget changes Council recommended this evening, and we'll be able to publish that as soon as possible, most likely tomorrow. It's worth noting that due to COVID, notice requirements have been relaxed in terms of time and place. So if we were to do this in a future budget, we would need to provide a little bit more time to notice for a second hearing and a little bit more time between hearings. Normally, a new LB1 would need to be published in a newspaper, and it would need to be published at least 5 days prior to the new hearing. Due to COVID, publication on the city's website and at any time prior to the hearing will be sufficient. So, in summary, the schedule of appropriations, which is attached to your budget resolution, in terms of the staff recommendations, what the table in front of you this evening shows is by program for all, how much did the budget committee approve for the budget for the next fiscal year. The technical adjustment for COLA, the $660,429 there. The technical adjustment for community event grants, taking out $21,200 with the intent that would be carried forward to fiscal year 22. And then the new, as noted before, the new special revenue fund for the police levy is a zero net. So it's taking it out of one fund and adding it dollar for dollar into the new fund. So our recommended adopted budget would, with those changes, be $189,876,580. And that concludes the presentation on the budget for the city of Tigard.
Are we doing questions?
Yep, Council President Goodhouse.
I make sure I'm tracking this. So we're making the adjustment compared to what we did at the budget with the budget committee. Why wasn't this done? I guess I'm confused. Why wasn't this done when because we knew that the levy had passed then. Why was the change not done, and why wasn't it not done and approved through the budget committee then? Why is it being changed now and being done different through council?
So, frankly, Councilor Goodhouse, that's on me. And with the approval of the levy and looking at the actual implementation of the levy, exploring that with finance staff, we spoke with our internal auditors, and looking at the reality of having the levy that passed. It quickly became apparent that while we could do this in the general fund, the city would be better off in terms of the clarity of reporting that we can provide to our community if we have this in its own fund. And so, so at the time that we were at the budget committee, I didn't have all of that information, and we were treating it like another police revenue source. And so putting it into the general fund.
In your defense, Mr. LaFrance, I appreciate you taking accountability, but the reality is we had the second budget hearing, we had the first hearing and the second hearing in between when the levy passed. So to think that it was going to pass on a Tuesday and you were going to have a complete accounting system ready to go, knowing the outcome of the vote on Thursday seems, I mean, I understand you apparently wanted to do that, but that doesn't seem reasonable either.
I just wanted to clarify, so I wanted to see if I was missing. So, okay, I have no other questions.
Other council questions? We have not even received public testimony yet. So if you have questions about Mr. LaFrance's presentation, let's do those, but please hold comments. Okay, let's move on to public testimony. We received, I think, a couple of written pieces of testimony on this agenda item. We had testimony from Haley McLaughlin and from Sarah Peterson. Both were commenting on the things related to police funding, the size of the policing budget, the comparison of the amount of money that we spend on police versus other social services or on social services and community services. That was from Haley, and then from Sarah, we had information about just a desire to make sure that we're trying to work on racial equity and gaining or regaining the trust of various citizens in Oregon that may feel like they're not fully part of the community and can trust us. And so we have received both of those, and those will be considered as we're having discussions. I do think it's important to acknowledge that you know, the city, other than providing a small amount of grant money to a couple social service organizations each year, overall the city in the past, maybe this is going to be changing as we have more community dialogue, but we've not really been in the social services business as far as a core service or even a side service. I mean, it's hard for me to say that devoting half of 1% of the general fund to a couple social service agencies. I don't really consider that an action, you know, it's hard to consider that a social services program or something robust like the city offers in other areas. So I'll just offer that as brief clarification about some of the public testimony we got. Mr. Dahl, does anyone else?
Oh, can I follow up off that comment?
Sure.
I was just going to point out, you mentioned a couple of social services, but I was going to see what area they classify as. I mean, we did pass the construction excise tax. We have through the urban renewal district, we have given money to SEPA, other low-income housing. So I don't know where those go, but I thought it'd just be also relevant to point those out, that we have put a large investment into many low-income housing in the Tiger Triangle in the area. We do have our money that we get from the CDBG funds that do go to different community projects or community things as well. So I think depends on how you define what social services are. The city has put a lot of money into many areas in different ways. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. I don't know if that falls in that same category or not.
Well, I think we're going to have an opportunity to hear so much more about this over the next few months as we work through some community discussions. Mr. Nollup, has anyone else called in?
We do not have any current callers.
Okay. Response to testimony by staff. And Mr. LaFrance, did you have any responses to the written testimony?
No response.
Okay. And then there's the request tonight, Mr. LaFrance, is that we continue this hearing till June 23rd. Is that correct?
So yes, the request this evening is that council consider the technical adjustments and any other changes that you may wish to make to the budget as approved by the budget committee, and then continue the hearing, instructing staff to publish a new LB1 with all changes included.
Okay, so we should have dialogue. We should have dialogue now on whatever feedback we have, but the recommended action is that we provide that input feedback, allow the staff to publish new budget documentation on the city's website for hearing next week, and that we continue the public hearing. So I think, again, to reiterate for all council members, staff's intent is to get all the feedback and anything that we're intending to change so that they can move forward with making those adjustments and publishing for next week. So Councilor Anderson.
No questions or comments.
Councilor Lube.
Thank you. I know there was some questions for Mr. LaFrance regarding this separate funding source, but I certainly wanted to speak to it and comment from it from sort of a government accounting perspective and also just from a general accountant perspective. I think this is the way to go. It's the way to ensure proper use of funds, proper accounting, easy, quick reference to the way that the funds are being spent, which I think is a council has been really important for us for continued clarity and communication as far as where the money is going and where the funding is going to be going. It's just a much easier, clearer way to do it. And as Mr. LaFrance spoke to it, you know, we would need to be tracking it anyway, and it's just much better in another city fund. And just to speak to the general accounting, you know, for government funds, there are lots of other cities that have tons of these funds. This isn't something that's unusual or it's a one-off. It's a very common practice with levies and different funding sources that need to be siloed off and need to be accounted for separately. So I highly support this and encourage this, and I thank Mr. LaFrance for bringing it to our attention and supporting the continuance. I think it's also really, really important to speak to not only the testimony we received tonight, but I think a lot of the testimony that we've received in the past couple of weeks. I would consider all of that public testimony for the budget that we're looking at. And it's certainly something that you know, personally, I'm listening. I'm hearing you and I'm listening to you. And it's sort of a frustrating process at this point because Oregon budget law says that we have to have a budget passed by June 30th, and it's important that we get this budget passed and taken care of. But we want to hear from you. We want to continue to look at what we want our community to look at, the way that we want it funded. And I think, you know, I personally have a dedication to a robust discussion, and we can make a lot of changes through our supplemental quarterly budgets where we can make adjustments to this. And I hope, as you know, Councillor Newton spoke to, I would also agree that I think the budget committee needs to be deeply involved if we're going to be making these changes. So as I support the budget as it is right now, I want to say that I support us having these continual dialogues and hearing from our community what they want their budgets to go through, and it's going to be a continual process. I hear the frustration that it's going to look like we're passing it as is right now and we're not hearing you and listening to you. I promise you that's not the case. You know, I think it's incredibly important that we do this the right way and we're not making these snap decisions and judgments without thoroughly vetting everything and looking things through and making sure that we have enough community input. So I wanted to say all of that just to say we do hear you, we're listening. I know it's not going to look like it right now, but it's certainly not the case in my circumstance. So that's all I have to add.
Councillor Lube, I think that's an excellent point. Not only the point about transparency with the fund being created and established, but also right on point with the conversations. I think staff, frankly, this will be a message to all the staff that are on the call, particularly that work with the budget, that we are likely, if the community continues with the dialogue that we're having, I think we could be and should be expecting, and all of you should be expecting, a larger mid-year budget change than you've ever seen. So whether that happens in the first quarter or the second quarter of this fiscal year, I don't know how quickly the work will be done. But I think that based on the feedback that we're getting from hundreds of people, you can expect some changes in priority and perhaps therefore changes in the budget in response to changing needs and priorities of our community. To Councillor Lube's point. Youth Councillor Turley, feedback or comment?
I have no additional comments or questions at this time, but I'm excited to see how the discussion around the budget shifts as the year continues.
Thank you. Councillor Newton, anything else?
Well, I won't go into depth. I concur with Councillor Lube. I think this is going to be an interesting year for us. I would support scheduling quarterly budget committee meetings October, January, and taking a really hard look at what we're hearing from the community, what we've what suggestions or what options we might have to address our racial equity issues, the COVID impacts, and any shift in council goals due to any changes in the economy. I think we need to commit to that for our community so they understand, as Councillor Lube said, this is a budget that we need to put in place for, you know, for us to be able to move forward to fund our city services, but this is going to be a different year, I think. I also support the technical adjustments that Director LaFrance outlined, and I think the police levy change is a good idea. Might I suggest that we're going to put it on the website, but might I suggest that we direct folks to that website through social media and anything we can, so that it's going to be kind of a quick turnaround. So anything we can do to point to that change, so people can see that. But again, I think we need to commit to looking at things constructively as we move forward. We're going to have some more robust discussions, and I believe we're going to have changes in this budget moving forward.
Councillor Newton, are you thinking that, I just want to get other people thinking about your idea there. Are you thinking maybe like half-day Saturday types of meetings, or what are you? I don't think the kind of dialogue you're talking about can happen in the context of maybe it could happen in an evening where the whole meeting is just devoted to that with the budget committee.
Right.
What did you have in mind?
Yeah, I was thinking either, you know, sometimes we have an extra, you know, Tuesday in there, or another time that we could accommodate the budget committee for a half day or something like that. And, okay, you know, staff's doing a lot of work. Kudos to our staff. They're doing a lot of work talking to folks as well and thinking about things that they might suggest for adjustments that we want to make in programs or services to our community. So I think it would give us an opportunity to talk about those things. So yeah, I think it needs to be specifically targeted to where we are economically, COVID impacts, council priority shifts, racial equity issue, and pivoting our budget or adjusting it as we need to get us through. But thanks for that, for asking for the clarification. And I would appreciate other councilors' comments on that.
Well, let's go to Council President Goodhouse to get his comments in, and then everybody else can circle back on your thoughts. Council President Goodhouse?
Yes, I concur with what's being said too. I like the idea of pulling the police levy into a separate part. One of the biggest things, going back, it seems like ages ago, but during the campaign, a lot of people are always skeptical about something being done, or is that money actually going to be used for what it's being passed for, or that was being voted on. And so I think the transparency is great to have that, where people can see that yes, that's being approved, and in the future, whatever the levy is in the future, that will be great to go back and show that that's what it's being used for, how it's being used. And I agree with Councillor Newton with the budget process. I know during the last time we had it, the mayor had made a comment that you know, we're talking about a lot of issues, and people want to say that different areas aren't being worked on, or there's waste in certain areas. So I think it's going to be a welcome time to have a lot of people jump in and look at all details of the budget and really have a say in it and see what we can do as a city and get that input. We have lots of committees, a lot of people. We're always looking for the input. So the budget's the one that is pretty complex, but the more that we can do, and I think the way, you know, maybe make the process a little easier too, to if we do half day or full day, to get the community involved, to kind of walk through and have Toby do a little bit of a budget 101 to say what's in the budget, how it works, what services we're required to provide, which ones we're not, and even kind of, it might be something good when we're posting this online right now between now and next week, is to state that the voters passed that money, and that money has to go towards the officers. So even though we have an increase in the police, by law, that's a contract and we have to follow that. But I'm looking forward to getting more community input and involvement in creating a community that community members are involved in.
Okay, Councillor Anderson or Councillor Lube or Councillor Turley, feedback on Councillor Newton's sort of proposal around the budget committee?
Yeah, Councillor Anderson, that's fine with me. I think a half day would be a good idea. Saturday, probably.
Okay.
I agree. Oh, this is Councilor Lube. I agree. I think that the more community members that we can involve in the process and the more transparency, the better.
Okay, so staff, you've got that direction. I don't know that we've provided a lot of other input on things in the budget that we want to see different for next week. Is I guess council, are you giving me the message that you want to continue the hearing but not provide any other adjustments or changes?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion?
A motion to.
No motion tonight.
We have to keep it open, don't we? We're keeping it open until next week?
That is the motion, to continue the hearing.
Oh, okay. I make a motion to continue the hearing.
Okay, do we have to state that it's date certain, City Attorney Rahala?
Yes, because you know the date, I would go ahead and provide for that.
Okay. I make a motion to continue the hearing to June 23rd.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll continue the public hearing to June 23rd. And we are now going to convene as the Town Center Development Agency for hearing about the TCDA's budget for next year. So I am going to open the public hearing. Anyone that wants to offer testimony will be allowed to do so. I have not seen any written comment on this. City Recorder, hopefully you can confirm there's no written testimony or feedback on the TCDA budget.
There was no written communication on this item.
Mr. Nolup, is there anyone in the phone queue?
There is not anyone in the phone queue for this item.
Mr. LaFrance, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. So the last step in the budget process this evening is consideration of the Town Center Development Agency budget. This was unanimously approved by the Budget Committee during the first Budget Committee meeting on May 16th. The TCDA covers our downtown and Tiger Triangle urban renewal areas. It does fund several key projects. In our downtown, some of the projects that would include would be the Universal Plaza design and activation, our Main Street, Green Street Phase 2, City Center Futures Project, and the Nick Wilson Fannel Creek Overlook. Within the Tiger Triangle, this budget will fund projects such as the park property acquisition, affordable housing development assistance with the SEPA Red Rock Commons, and development assistance for the Overland project at 72nd and Dartmouth, the project that was part of the discussion this evening as part of the master fees and charges. In addition, the Highway 217 multi-use path connecting the triangle to downtown. And as we're concluding the budget presentations for this evening, I would be remiss, early on I talked about all the work that the many city staff has done. I'd like to specifically call out Mr. Steve King and Ms. Liz Lutz, who I could not do this process without the two of them. They've put in countless hours. Liz is the contact for the budget committee, and they have done great work this year, and I appreciate every minute of it. With that, staff has concluded its presentation of the TCDA budget and recommends approval of the budget as presented.
All right, thank you, Mr. LaFrance. Mr. Nolup, just to confirm one more time, no callers?
You are correct. There are no call-ins.
All right. I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to TCDA board discussion and consideration. Councilor Anderson.
No questions or comments. I would approve.
Youth Councilor Turley.
Sorry, no.
Councilor Lube.
No questions or comments.
Councilor Newton.
No comments. Looks good to me.
Council President Goodhouse.
No comments.
Somebody have a motion?
I approve TCDA resolution number 20-02.
Councilor
I second.
Okay. Councilor Anderson seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
TCDA Resolution Number 20-02. A resolution adopting the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget with adjustments, making appropriations, and imposing and categorizing taxes.
City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Chair Snyder,
Yes.
Director Goodhouse,
Yes.
Director Newton,
Yes.
Director Lube,
Yes.
Director Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, TCDA Resolution 20-02 is adopted unanimously. We will now reconvene as the City Council for the remainder of the meeting.
Connected as a host.
Call in host. Show recording is on.
Is now exiting.
Mr. Nullup, are we
Sorry.
still okay to continue?
Yeah, you're fine. That was us disconnecting the call-in service.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a Tigard Strategic Plan refresh update. City Manager Wine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I know that you're just finished looking ahead to the next year, but we're going to ask you to look a little bit even farther ahead into the future. And we want to give you a status report tonight about the update of the city's strategic plan and how we've been working over the last year to refresh it, how the plan is shaping up, and to get your feedback. So thank you, Mr. Nullup, for helping out with our PowerPoint presentation. I'm just going to pause for a second. And you're going to be meeting members of our strategic plan guidance team, and I'll introduce them as I hand it off to them as you hear about how the strategic plan is shaping up. So we'll start with the first slide, please. In 2014, Tigard adopted its first strategic plan. And as you all know, the purpose of a strategic plan is to identify the direction of change, and it gives focus to make choices about our desired future. At the time we adopted our first strategic plan, we set up an ambitious vision. That is to be the most walkable community in the Pacific Northwest where people of all ages and abilities enjoy healthy and interconnected lives. The plan also included 4 goals that focused on the things that we needed to do, and the focus was also on making Tigard more walkable, healthy, and connected. So those goals are listed here. Next slide, please. Now we're 5 years on from that original vision, and we've had lots of accomplishments and progress, from our sidewalk inventory and our Safe Routes program to Tigard Walks and our Complete Streets policy. We've implemented lighter, quicker, cheaper projects that encourage walking connections. We have capital improvements that focus on becoming more walkable. We have a focus on community engagement that's increased our city's capacity to communicate better. And our library programs and successful grant applications have focused on being healthy and connected. So as with any plan, an update to the vision looks at whether we would change a few degrees of our course on the compass and just set new goals and priorities for the next 5 to 10 years. So process-wise, the leadership team and the then implementation team for the strategic plan went through an analysis of the current state with the idea that we would try to figure out what lies ahead for Tigard. And this analysis looked at internal and external factors that would influence the city's future, including things about the transportation trends, economy, technology, facilities, financing, anything that would be affecting us in the future. We looked at our surveys of employee input and community surveys that were focused on the vision, and we reviewed that to look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that would affect the city. So what the current state analysis told us was that in the future, we needed to do a better job of identifying and be more focused with measurable outcomes of the vision in an updated plan. We also learned that we needed to have more internal support by our employees for implementation of the plan to be able to achieve more. Next slide, please. The process of refreshing the vision and the strategic priorities was really looking about where we started and how we could make small adjustments to set our future course. So feedback that we heard about our current vision included two perspectives. One was that becoming the most walkable was unrealistic, and another was that having an unachievable goal, an aspirational goal, gave us really something that was audacious to strive for. We wanted the updated vision to be both aspirational and achievable. And so when we went through this current state analysis, we realized that there were some concepts and some ways that we would be looking toward the future that we needed to take into account, including values around becoming a more equitable community, a safer community, and one that's focused on climate action in the future. I will mention that the vision and strategic priorities that you're going to hear about tonight are not, they haven't been COVID tested, and they haven't been racial justice tested. And we have we probably have another look at this plan as it relates to just what's been happening over the last 3 months, but that's to come. So we talked a lot in the updated vision about the words that could be part of an updated vision, and more importantly, what those words mean to the community and to our staff, and whether it would capture best what we were aspiring to. Words like accessible and inclusive, connected and engaging, and in the end, very few words that needed to capture our future direction. So the final element of what the words I'm going to say tonight is to introduce you to members of our guidance team, our strategic plan guidance team. Another way to refresh the focus on strategic priorities was by enrolling a group of innovative staff people who help us carry out the plan. And this strategic plan guidance team is just getting rolling. The point of this team is to guide the implementation of the strategic plan once it's adopted. The team consists of some 1 to 2 people from each part of the organization who are engaged, and they're energized by the vision. They've been asked to work outside of the traditional hierarchy of the organization, and they're asked to champion the plan and make it happen. So the team has worked to build the plan below the level of the vision and track implementation progress, implementation actions, and opportunities. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because we don't have an adopted plan yet, but I asked some members of our guidance team to help us present tonight to speak to you about the strategic priorities that are shaping up in the plan and what our next steps will be. So our guidance team members tonight are Gary Pagenstecker, Lloyd Purdy, Amber Bell, and Nicole Hendricks. And so I'm going to say our proposed refreshed vision and then hand it off to our guidance team members. Next slide, please. So here is the proposed refreshed vision for our strategic plan. It's TIGERD, an equitable community that's walkable, healthy, and accessible for everyone. And with that, I want you to hear from the team about the way the strategic priorities are shaping up. So next, please.
Thank you, Marty. This is Gary Pagenstecker. Good evening, Mayor Snyder, councilors. Strategic priority 1 was the original first goal of the past plan, and it has retained the nut of that first goal of walkability. And as you see here, it's basically 2 parts: create an attractive and well-connected pedestrian network. So a dense network and a desirable network. And the actions I can relay to you in a minute, but just before I go on, I want to thank Chief McAlpine and and Brian Rager for representing their departments in drafting this. There was a subset of the guidance team which coalesced around each of these strategic priorities, and they and others were very helpful in creating this draft, which I'm sharing with you now. The actions that fall under these two objectives of a dense and desirable pedestrian network for the well-connected, and language is still an issue in developing this plan. We have created an inventory of existing condition, create a future state of the pedestrian network, identify new funding sources for construction, make sure that parks and trailheads are within a quarter mile of every resident, and expand the network annually. Under the attractive or the quality of this dense network, we have developed and adopt design guidelines, design network for active transportation and recreation purposes, design for crime prevention through environmental design, coordinate seasonal patrols for park trail safety, invest in infrastructure increasing public safety like lighting, ensure ADA design is applied for accessibility for all users, and fund existing facility maintenance. So this strategic priority serves the vision as walkability is one of the most equitable modes of transportation. It serves the beginning and end of every trip, sometimes is the whole trip. A walkable city is good for public health, both physical and mental, and when designed to be accessible to the most vulnerable, the young, the old, and disabled. So on the slide, you see an image that may be familiar to you as the Red Rock Creek Trail. This is an example of sort of leaning into creating this pedestrian network plan. Red Rock Creek Trail, as you can see, the red lines are regional connectors on the edges of the image. Banner Creek Trail on the left, and Lake Oswego Trail on the bottom right, and the Portland system in the top right. And the Red Rock Creek Trail is the connector between all of these regional trail systems, but also provides a spine through the triangle and the Hunsaker Core. And it also crosses two significant barriers in the city that are a mile separated both on 217 and the railroad. Those two bridge elements are elevated in the flatness of the floodplain area of Red Rock Creek and provide an exceptional experience. And this spine will be used for loops and connections to development in the urban core, the urbanizing areas of Tigard and downtown and the Triangle. So the implementation, the guidance team is an implementation group. And so we're really interested that the council look at this carefully, this draft, so that they, so that when it comes time to implementing it over its 5-year planning horizon, the council has staff back in trying to get things done that are identified in the plan. So just briefly, the ongoing planning efforts of the Transportation System Plan and the Parks Master Plan, luckily, are timed to create the preferred pedestrian network plan through those processes. New funding for construction and maintenance of existing facilities is going to be a key component to making this more than we are already doing now. And as you know, Public Works has been worried, and so about having new obligations with an expanded network, let alone being able to fund the current system. So this is key to implementation of this strategic priority. And lastly, efficient delivery of the pedestrian network improvements also relies on the strategic priority number 2, which is implemented through development, and you'll hear from Skylar on that in a minute, or Lloyd, I believe. And in the strategic priority 3, their first objective is be a high-performing workplace with seamless delivery. I want to focus on that because we need improved interdepartmental coordination in order to achieve, I think, the objectives of this strategic priority. So just to conclude, appreciate your close review and your comments on this draft of the plan over the coming weeks to ensure that implementation is supported. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Good evening, Council. This is Lloyd Purdy. I'm pleased to be with you digitally tonight. I do want to share with you very briefly some highlights of strategic vision priority number 2. There are 5 different objectives. I will in fact detail those, but I think you should also know that there's over 3 dozen specific actions that we've identified with these strategic priorities. I'll go through them one by one. Just kidding. I just want you to know we already know many of the actions we need to take. And there are 34 measures or outcomes or metrics tied to these 5 objectives. And I'm not going to read through all of them either. I might give you a highlight on a couple of them. A lot of this work is centered around the work that the Community Development Department, the Engineering Department, and the Public Works Department have been doing and will need to continue to do, but it's by no means limited to just those 3 departments. This strategic priority also has a lot of similarities to the same priority in the current or the preceding vision. There hasn't been a great deal of change, but we have added more focus on health and equity. So I do want to run through a couple and read for you, for those that are listening, these strategic objectives. Pursue development that maximizes public health benefits while increasing connections between people and community destinations. The second one, focusing development associated resources in the parts of the city that have the best capacity to serve, house, employ, and attract the most people with the least impact on Tigard's natural systems and the climate. And to the right of this text, I've shown you some examples of how we are already preparing to do those things, whether that's on the top right graphic, a mixed use path, or the Fano Creek Trail, or the city's existing but growing complete streets network. Mike, you can hit the next slide for me, please. 3 more objectives to tell you about. We want to make sure that the development that we see, and this is often development done by the private sector, not by the city itself, ensure that development and growth supports the vision. And that means we have to understand the effects of development on Tigard's vulnerable populations and mitigate these impacts within our projects we're working on, or projects that developers are working on, and over time. We need to be able to proactively intervene as necessary to meet the housing needs of all community members. And I know we've done some of that, and we will continue to do more of that. And then plan and create in a manner that reduces climate impacts to the maximum extent we can, knowing that often it's the private sector that are making these impacts. And again, I'm sharing with you some graphics and some examples of projects like the Trailhead proposed project off of Wall Street, and the Hunsaker affordable housing project, again, off of Wall Street. Examples of how we're trying to be a partner to the private sector to make these outcomes. And I just mentioned my favorite word, or one of my favorite parts about this program, is that we have tied these 3 strategic priorities not only to goals, but also to measurable outcomes. So for instance, we want to begin to measure and test the number of residents living within walking distance of groceries and essential services, the number of streets we have that are local but are also complete streets, the number of employers and employees served by transit, the number of residents, as Gary mentioned, within walking distance of trails. We want to be able to measure the balance of our land use between residential, commercial, and industrial. So I'm giving you a sense of the granularity that we can get to with this second strategic priority, and I think that's a nice advancement and evolution, and we can do that with all of these priorities. And that's all I wanted to tell you right now about strategic priority number 2, and I can hand this off to, I think, Amber and Nicole.
Thank you, Lloyd. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Amber Bell. I'm the Reader Services Manager at the library and a member of the guidance team. I'm going to be talking about Strategic Priority 3, which, as you can see from the slide, is to set the standard for excellence in public service and customer experience. And this priority has 3 objectives: to be a high-performing workplace with seamless service delivery, to offer exemplary customer service, and to enhance community awareness and engagement with city activities and services. And I'll just say that as a member of this guidance team and as a manager at a city department, I'm really thrilled with this strategic priority, because city staff members across all of the departments can play a role in accomplishing the objectives of this priority, as we're all providing public service. So I really think that staff will be able to find themselves and their work in this priority, and that city residents will really benefit from that. I'm not going to read through all of the actions and metrics, but I do want to highlight how equity is embedded into the actions of this priority. So I will also mention a few of the actions and their corresponding metrics. For the first objective, to be a high-performing workplace with seamless service delivery, one major action is to hire and retain a workforce that accurately represents the Tigard community. And a corresponding metric would be to evaluate employee demographics compared to Tigard census data. Also, an action in the first objective is to promote a values-driven organizational culture that reinforces inclusion. And this action will be measured with the number of equity and inclusion-related trainings that staff attend. I think that actions such as these will really have a meaningful impact on city staff and will have positive outcomes for city residents. The second objective is to offer exemplary customer service. One major action is to provide information and communication in formats that are accessible and easy to understand, and we'll use metrics that include measuring the languages that we provide information in and how many documents are translated into languages beyond English. The third objective, enhance community awareness and engagement with city activities and services. A few major actions there are to intentionally create an environment that fosters participation from all members of the community, and to build authentic relationships and partnerships through city initiatives. Metrics include, and I feel will probably be more developed, will be the number of events that we provide and the percentage of social media followers whose primary language is not English. So, as I said, these actions and metrics that I highlighted focus on how equity is embedded in this strategic priority. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Amber. Mike, go ahead and, go for. Actually, Marty, do you want to take that one?
I can take this one. I wanted to just make a note about, you might be wondering what happened to the former Goal 4. So I just wanted to note for the council that in the currently adopted strategic plan, Goal 4 says fund the vision while maintaining core services. And we worked hard on this question for 5 years. In the first chapter of the strategic plan, we discovered that doing both of the things in this goal is very challenging. Core services are difficult to define, and practically we never carved out the existing resources to substantially make investments in the vision. So now, I think we can count in the realm of success. A primary part of this goal acknowledged that we would need to expand our resources as a city, and that's been helped by the recent passage of the local option levy, which was always part of Goal 4. So in the end, what we decided to do when we were thinking about updating this goal was we said, you know, finding the resources to be able to invest in the vision is embedded in the vision, and the priorities in this goal were already defined elsewhere. So we decided to eliminate what was goal 4, and I will hand it on from here to Nicole.
Thanks, Marty. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nicole Hendricks, and I'm the Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm also a member of the guidance team. I'm here to share where we currently are in the input process and detail our steps moving forward. So since January, our team has workshopped and completed a proposed vision and strategic priorities, as you've just seen. In addition, we created summary pages, which I provided a picture of one on the slide for each strategic priority and the vision, so people can quickly and easily see the process of where we started in 2014, what actions we've taken, what we heard from the actions we took, and how we responded that ultimately resulted in what we're presenting today. So these summary pages were paired with surveys that we developed, one for staff and one for our boards and committees. And the difference between the two surveys are minimal. We basically just separated them to kind of personalize the introduction and the thank you note. Both surveys are short. They're about 7 questions, and they seek validation for the direction we're heading and provide opportunity for feedback. The survey launched in late May, so a couple weeks ago, and early June, and will be open until the end of next week. As of today, we have 64 staff responses and 13 committee responses. We will be reaching out to committee liaisons again to check in and ask for more voices, because we would love more feedback. And out of the people who have shared so far, 90% are supportive of the vision and the strategic priorities as we just proposed, and the 10% who are not provided really great suggestions and feedback that the guidance team will review as a group, and then we'll see how we can improve that into our proposal. So our upcoming guidance team meeting is at the end of this month, and that's when we're going to discuss and finalize our approach to community outreach for the public. It could take the form of a survey. Either way, whatever content we have or the summary pages, we'll make sure it's translated in Spanish, and that we have it available on multiple platforms and advertised. In terms of timeline, we will collect community feedback through the end of July and incorporate that and finalize to bring back to council in August. And I'll just end with our guidance team is excited to get feedback and then also move into that implementation phase. I know right now we've been focused on development and outreach, but we've also discussed ways of how we can make sure that we are held accountable for the metrics by setting benchmarks and timelines, and we're really excited to get started on that. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole and Gary and Lloyd and Amber. Tonight, Council, really our goal in bringing this item to you is to brief you about the process we've been through. Our hope is to hear from you, your thoughts about this updated plan. I've been asking for you offline when we meet in one-on-one meetings about your feedback and the way this is evolving. So our hope tonight was really just to collect your thoughts and your first impressions about what you're seeing here and make them part of our input. So thank you for the time to let you know our progress on our refreshed strategic plan.
So City Manager Wine, just as a matter of process and like for tonight, the copy of the material that the council was given included both the the priority, the objectives, the actions and timelines, and the metrics. At least that's the copy I think we were given a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now. Are you wanting comment on all of that, or are you wanting to limit it to just the priorities and objectives? Or it was hard for me to review only part of it, so I have feedback, I guess I should say, on all of it, and I just don't want to be sort of going to a level of detail that you were not intending tonight. And so I thought other other members of council may be in the same position. But let's start with other members of the council. Councilor Newton, you want to start?
Sure, thank you. And I've had a chance to review the broader document, and I shared some comments with City Manager when we had our last one-on-one. So I'll make my comments brief and reflective of what I've already shared with her. One comment I would have to start with, I just wondering if we might be getting some different comments as we're meeting with the community on the racial equity issues, and that might tweak the direction of this somewhat. So that's just a general comment. Maybe the timeline might need to be adjusted a little. Really quickly on strategic priority number 1, I shared with the city manager that my brother-in-law he's on a scooter. And so he likes walking, for example, rolling the Heritage Trail. But whenever he and my sister look to come to the city of Tigard to enjoy some of our outdoor amenities, the question they always ask is, where do we park? Because he has to drive a handicap accessible van to a place to park. So I think we need to consider the broader issue of accessibility in terms of mobility, just generally as we're moving forward. And 2 more comments. Over time, I've heard from folks about their interest in taking mass transit, but they don't feel safe walking to or waiting at a bus stop. There isn't a safe location. I know we're doing a lot of work in that. You know, that's been years of me working at the city and hearing that. But I think it would also be important to make sure we're mindful of that. People who don't feel like they have a safe way to get to a bus stop, or when they get there, it isn't a safe place to wait. And then the last thing I would say, I was a little confused by the term attractive, and I'm getting down in the weeds. I didn't know if we meant it looks nice or it's a place people want to go. So that was a little confusing to me, because I think we could get into a big debate about, I think it's attractive and you don't. So that's just a general comment. Another general comment I would make is, I looked at all the metrics and measures, and I won't go over that, but I think we need to make sure we're measuring things we have some control over. So I just put that as a general comment. If we're measuring things and we really aren't able to control them to some degree, that's going to be difficult. And then my last comments are on priority 3. I thought priority 3 did a good job of reflecting goals for a diverse workplace, but I was thinking it might be more important to talk about equity and service provision. So especially with the time now, everything from police to parks, to housing, to economic development, to utilities, transportation, communication. Are we looking at how equitably we are providing services to our community? And that could be, again, as I mentioned, handicapped or disabled folks, income, housing challenged, our Black and Latinx communities, and so seniors. You know, so I think looking at our service provision, which is the main thing we do, is provide services to our community. I'd like to see that strategic priority address excellence in service, in public service, be broadened a little bit more. So those are my thoughts on that. It does a good job of capturing, we want to be a high performing workplace and we want to reflect our community and be inclusive, but I think we need to pivot a little bit and think about how we provide services equitably to our community. Those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Councilor Anderson.
Oh, just general, I like them. I think that these actionable items and metrics are going to be easier to apply for our decisions and our visions. I appreciate the level of detail, and we'll continue looking in the future.
Councilor Lube.
Thank you. I want to echo a lot of what Councilor Newton had to say. One of the things that I would add is I think, goal 2 and 3 really talk about equity a lot and reaching some of our community areas, but I sort of feel like the first goal doesn't address it as directly. And one of the things that I would hope to be included is a focus on underserved areas for the pedestrian network. When I got a presentation last week for the parks master plan, part of the presentation was actually overlaying the areas in which people can walk to a park within 10 minutes from their house. And it was a really helpful visual map to see where our gaps are. And so my question would be the same thing for kind of a pedestrian network or for sidewalks. Where are the gaps? Are they concentrated in specific areas? Do we need to focus on putting improvement and investment in those areas to make it more equitable? So that would be my challenge for that first goal, is how do we continue to focus in areas that don't quite have the same level of service or amenities that other areas of Tigard do.
Thank you, Councillor Lube. Youth Councillor Turley?
I would echo what Councillor Lube and Councillor Newton said. I think accessibility is of large importance with any project that we're doing, and I'm really excited about the rest of the proposals. So thank you.
Council President Goodhouse?
That kind of dovetails into my thought on it. One thing that been kind of a project of mine for years, and one of the council goals is the sidewalk gap program or study, or looking at doing a bond for a sidewalk gap. So I wonder how that fits into this. As it was pointed out, there's many areas where there isn't safe ways to get around, safe crossings. So see how that part works in there. And the other part I was going to add is that looks like there's a bit of a focus on new paths or new ways to get around. But one of the biggest areas, and hopefully we kind of avoid this in the triangle, is Main Street with pedestrians. It's really hard for pedestrians to get around some of those areas, especially Tigard Street and Main Street, right next to the railroad tracks. That is, if you ever sit there and have a cup of coffee or walking through that area, you see that cars try to gun it to get out into traffic or cross, and it's a really dangerous spot for pedestrians to cross or walk around. And as more downtown Tigard gets built out, or more people are down there, we need to look at more ways to make that either less cars, slower, or ways for more stops to be there. Even the crosswalks are there with stop signs can be an issue. So hopefully there's a focus more on that area and an improvement in the triangle, and then how the future sidewalk gap bond measure or something like that may work into this, as far as crossings and safe routes and sidewalks that we don't have, filling those gaps.
Thank you, Council President Goodhouse, and I would echo your comment about that intersection. That's the only place in the city that I almost crashed a police car, was at Main and Tigard Street. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through I have a whole bunch of notes that I've taken, or a number of notes that I've taken that I thought originally I was maybe going to share with the city manager in a meeting, but we haven't been able to do that yet. So I'm going to go through them now. Some of them are pretty specific, so I apologize. But I hope, City Manager Wine, is this an okay format to do this in?
Yes.
If I'm talking to, okay. So in strategic priority 1, objective 1.2, and the actions, I made a note when I was reading all this stuff about, particularly the point D about safety. This will be the first time the council's heard about this, but I actually had proposed to staff that's probably 18 months ago now. I have a relatively innovative idea for a phone app, and I won't get into a lot of the detail, but the whole idea would be to help keep people safe and feel safe and be safe, such that it would automatically notify either our 911 dispatch center, or via some other means notify our teams of somebody's location automatically and what type of help they might need. So without getting into a lot of detail about that, I guess when I was reading this section, I thought, I was recalling back to my meeting with Mike Nolip and Chief McAlpine, and I think maybe that should be revisited as an action to consider in here. So that was one comment. In strategic priority 2, objective 2.5, I made a note just that the objective here to reduce climate impacts to the maximum extent practicable. That language just jumped out to me as maybe slightly, and maybe it's not. I think the council and maybe the community can provide input on whether that is too strong of language or the right language or whatever. It struck me as something I wanted to give a lot more thought to. So maybe the council can have a discussion about that at some point. And I can hear other people's perspectives. In actions for, sorry, I'm going back one. In actions for section 2.4, I would suggest looking at, and I think I've mentioned this to Mr. LaFrance in the past, that we should consider a program of bonding SDCs to promote workforce housing and transit-oriented development. That's a common tactic used in other communities and something we should probably consider because it helps promote building the kinds of things we want to see, and it makes building those projects a little bit easier so we can promote them. I had a question on the metrics. I guess this ended up in a metrics thing, though I'm not sure it's a metric. In 2.5 on the far right-hand side, require new development to demonstrate reduced or limited VMT through a transportation impact analysis and appropriate transportation demand management tools. I guess because it's in a metric, I'm not sure whether, the way I read this, I was kind of thinking that we were saying this would be required, and if it didn't demonstrate this, then we wouldn't allow a development. And I'm not sure that's what we're intending to say there, but it struck me as I just wanted more clarification, I guess, on what the intent was, and I think that should be looked at a little more carefully about how we have that written. For strategic priority 3, so I made this note. I feel bad making this statement, but I made this note like probably a month ago or more. I read the entirety of strategic priority 3, and the note I wrote myself was, it seems like this section could be bigger and more inspirational and aspirational. Those are my comments. Who has other feedback or things that have come to mind, since I know we're getting late in the hour here, but anyone have anything that comes up from either something someone else said or anything more you would want to say on this topic?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Newton, I have a question for the city manager. So under the process that we're looking at, will the council have an opportunity to hear a summary of the feedback you're getting from the community, and then maybe have a, public, I don't know if I want to call it a public hearing, but some sort of session where we could, evaluate that and talk about this some more? Because I'm really interested to hear what kind of feedback you're getting down the road, and maybe we could adjust, how we move forward based on that. Thanks. I don't know if we want to get down in the weeds of every metric and all that. But.
I mean, the short answer is yes. What you heard from Nicole in her comments about the process is that we're in the process now of getting input from the folks who volunteer for us on boards and commissions, and I think our goal is through July to have wider community input that it'll all be available to, and we can present to council so you can talk about what we're hearing. And I would say too, we I said this in my opening comments, we're in times right now that even as we were incorporating some of these concepts like equity into the vision statement, that we might want to look at them again and think about what that means. So, and as you said, the tenor or the kind of feedback that we're getting at this moment could be shifting. So we'll bring it all back to you, and before we ask you to adopt would be for you to review or be able to see the comments.
Council President Goodhouse.
Thank you.
Yeah. So on that topic, I was going to ask, beyond the committees, I'd love to have input and feedback from that. Beyond that, if we reach out to the papers or something like that, so we can get as much of a wide cast of opinions and insight on that. I mean, this is something that's a huge project, a huge resource to really get the input from the community. And I would add that when the committee members are getting this, not only are we asking for input, but also give them the ability, if they want to make changes or suggestions, and really change it. I think sometimes when it's presented to a committee and they feel like input, they feel like they just have to comment on existing language, not the authority to really change it or add to it or make any adjustments to the document or suggestions. So we really empower our committee members with that language as well. It's just not input, but the ability to change.
We want them to think big.
Yeah, I think sometimes they feel, I've heard from some committee members, I think sometimes they feel that they're just listening and it's a head nod or agreement. So if we really can kind of translate that message that they have the authority to make any, as the mayor said, think outside the box, make any changes or anything to it at all.
Thank you.
Councillor Anderson or Councillor Lube or Youth Councillor Turley, anything further? Okay, City Manager Wine and team, have we accomplished what we were hoping to tonight with this
I think so. Team, do you have any more comments or anything for the council? Thank you, council.
I would add one more thing, because I did get a chance to look at the preliminary results of what we're seeing so far, and there are a lot of comments about equity, and both positive, in the positive sense of we placed emphasis on equity in the vision as Tigard an equitable community, and people really appreciated that. But then there are also people who said we don't see it as much in strategic priority 1, or just making sure it's fluid throughout each priority. So we are seeing those kinds of comments already.
Okay. Thanks. All right. We have no non-agenda items. City Manager Wine, do you have an administrative report?
I don't have an administrative report tonight. I will mention that I received a request overnight from Council President Goodhouse about the use of the plaza. I'm following up on details about how that can work. So I will report back at a later time on that item.
And then there had also been some communication, I think, from Ascension Drive neighbors about the fact that we had said that a website would be up by June 15th, and I don't think it was up, and so they were asking about that. Do you have any further update on that?
I don't have an update except to report that it's not ready yet. So my goal would be to ask staff to loop back directly to the neighbors and let them know what the ETA on the website will be.
Okay, thank you. We have no executive sessions scheduled. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move for adjournment.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved by Council President Goodhouse and seconded by Councillor Lube. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Council President Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councillor Newton?
Yes.
Councillor Lube?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.